Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Executive Committee on Thursday, 16th of November. So Executive Committee is one of the major decision-making committees of the Council. And I am pleased to say that for those that have looked at the agenda, we have plenty of decisions that are being made at this committee tonight. So thank you for joining us, whether you're in the room or watching us remotely. So as a starting point then, apologies for this evening. We have Councillor Kate Revilius, who isn't with us. She has a job share with Councillor Kent, and Councillor Kent obviously is here to represent us as executive member for Environment and Climate Emergency, and Councillor Revilius is not with us this evening. So second item that we will speak about, but noted as one on the agenda, is declarations of interest. Does anybody have a declaration of interest? Councillor Kilbane.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My partner works for SASH, Safe and Sound Home, so I will leave the room when it comes to item 13.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane. Nobody else has a declaration of interest. Second item on the agenda is exclusion of press and public. So I'd like to remind all members that are here, whether voting or not, that the discussion around items or information that are commercially confidential cannot take place in public. So the exclusion of press and public is to consider the exclusion from Annex K to agenda item 10 on the grounds that it contains information relating to information to the financial or business affairs of any particular person. Do we need to go into private session? Does anybody need to ask any questions or wants to speak about that item? No. Okay, there's no need for us to exclude press and public, therefore, so we can move on from that item. Thank you, everybody. Item number 3 is the minutes of the last meeting. I have them here with me. Does anybody have any comments? Yes, Councillor Eyre?
One comment and one question probably for the monitoring officer. In terms of comment, I'm normally recorded as in attendance, and I was not for this particular one. So I don't know if that's a change in policy or just been missed off. Some people may not wish I weren't here. And the second one was to the monitoring officer, was we did receive written representation as part of public participation, which has not been included in the minutes, has not been recorded anywhere. And I know this has happened again at this particular meeting, and I wondered what the process was where people have submitted written comments to the meeting, whether they should be recorded in the minutes, not recorded in the minutes, or where they exist outside of the ether.
I suppose my starting point would be, Chair, that if those written representations are received as part of the public participation section, and I have to say, my memory is failing me as to whether or not they were, then as with the other public participation elements, there should be at the very least a précis of them in the minutes, if not the full comment. So we will take that away and we will ensure that they are included as an addendum for future.
Thank you, monitoring officer. Right, so are we happy to approve the minutes from last meeting then? Yes, everybody's in agreement with that. So I will sign those at the end, Robert, for you. Thank you. Our next item is agenda item 4, public participation. And this evening we have 7 speakers, 2 of whom are joining us remotely. So the first person who will speak to us for 3 minutes is Mr. Andrew Dickinson, and he wants to speak on the remit of the committee, transport strategy, and why he couldn't speak at the last meeting. So, Mr. Dickinson, do you want to come to the table there? And you'll find that there's a button on your mic that you'll need to switch on. Would you like me to give you a 30-second warning before your 3 minutes is up?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
I wish to discuss the potential introduction of restrictions to travelling, and this is specifically relating to the use of the private car that have been outlined in the transport plan. It seems that most cities are introducing some form of clean air zone, low emission zone, low traffic neighbourhood, or a 15-minute city. These are based on a combined belief that air pollution seems to be killing thousands of residents and that harmful levels of CO2 present a threat to our existence. I assert that both of these claims are wild exaggerations. Now, there's far too much information to go through, but I would like to highlight two key areas. The evidence of global warming. Claims of global warming have been exaggerated, and rational scientific debate critically analysing the evidence has been poor. The sixth assessment report produced by the IPCC has been criticised by the Global Warming Policy Foundation, has been criticised by the Global Warming Policy Foundation as being wrong in several specific areas of climate change, as well as stating that there is no convincing empirical evidence at all when it makes reference to rising heat waves. There are clearly some big questions to be asked around the sensational headlines and their validity. The second point is that of lobbying. The driving force behind the implementation of net zero low traffic schemes are not rational independent scientists arguing their case with empirical evidence scrutinised and peer reviewed. It is big business funding multi-billion-pound lobbying campaigns. The Clean Air Fund is one of these such entities, and their website proudly states that they in fact were responsible for creating the clean air zones in Bath, Brighton, Portsmouth, and with others to follow. Who are the people behind these organisations? They have not been democratically elected, their policies have not been debated and voted for, and yet they seem to wield significant power and influence. It is simply wrong that private individuals can pervert due democratic process and exclude the public from democratic policy making. To give some indication of the scale of these operations and the extent of bias, consider that very few organisations have maintained a very critical perspective on climate and emergent and energy policies. The one such organisation is known as the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Now, the grants given advocating net zero equate to over 5,000 years of the GWPF operations. This imbalance of funding is skewing the arguments and resulting in bad policies. Now, I've not even scratched the surface on this subject.
You have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
I hope I have done enough to encourage you all to question the evidence base for any future decisions and to understand the full long-term social and economic impact of any transport decisions. A good transport plan is not just about installing ANPR cameras on every side street and charging motorists £20 to go to the shops or to drive to work. We need a fair, balanced, democratically decided decisions that benefit us, the residents. I have time. I have three simple graphs I would like to go through.
Thank
you. Pass these round.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. That's your 3 minutes now.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And your comments will be considered in our decision making. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Our second speaker is Anna Semlin. And so, Anna, you know what you're doing there. 3 minutes, please. Would you like me to give you a 30-second warning? Yes, okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you for having me at committee. It's again about transport, and you're expecting me to say 20 is plenty, so I will. But really, I'm going to talk about traffic reduction, and I've handed you each one of these, which is an Add Up Your Car Cost worksheet. It was the forerunner of this book on traffic reduction that sold 145,000 copies. It's because the 20% target, though I applaud it, it's very difficult to reach, and the current options won't get there. You've got an 8% national increase in mileage year on year. You've got 14% new car registrations. You've got 10k more houses being built on a dual ring road primarily. Now, this book says, save money, be healthy, be green. It's in that order that people consider their traffic reduction. And what I'm first of all going to recommend you do is a workplace parking levy. This is done by various cities. Edinburgh are expecting it to raise 11 million, which is a major contribution to your budget's shortfall. I've sat on economic scrutiny and I've been there with the difficult decision making, and you've got to charge people more to drive. Who are you going to charge? people in work. That is the fair socialist way of doing it, particularly because you've ruled out congestion charging. You do have to look at the kinds of people who are going to reduce their traffic use. And I think it's the second car owners primarily. And you do need to then be able to speak to that kind of group who are generally women. So you need women on your transport expert group. You need women who've been pregnant in York, who've cycled around York, who've moved children around York. Now, I'm offering, and I hope that Councillor Kilbane will see that this is a collaborative offer. This is I can help you. I've got an email list of people who are interested in road safety, who are busy signing a petition for Vision Zero, which is fundamental to the traffic reduction policy succeeding. You've got to make it safer, because the second reason is be healthy. People have to feel that the alternatives are healthier than driving. Otherwise, if it doesn't save them money, otherwise they're not going to get out of their cars. And you do need this traffic education policy that's not in there, and as well as the workplace parking levy that's not in there. You've also massively got to increase dash cam and helmet cam reporting.
You have
and
30 seconds left.
Individualized travel planning, which would work. Now then, you need a visionary. Let me just explain that every article in here is about traffic reduction, and they go back to the mid-90s. I know about this, and I have lived and worked in York, and I'm a socialist like you are. And I think if you bring in Adam Tranter and so on, they will not have gone around York with a double buggy trailer with 2 kids, which is actually your target group. The lower hanging fruit is speed reduction and trying to get an expert into your traffic reduction policies properly.
Thank you for that. And your comments on that will most definitely be considered in the work that Councillor Kilbane particularly is carrying out on this. Thank you for that.
Almost definitely. Thank you.
Right, our third speaker then is Councillor Nelson, and she wants to speak to us about the free school meal item. Thank you, Councillor. You have 3 minutes. Would you like me to give you a 30-second notice?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Yes, I would like to speak on the free school meals agenda item. As one of the newer councillors for Westfield, I have come really to just say how sort of excited and thrilled I am that we will be finally launching the pilot of this, and that the school that has been chosen to launch the pilot of this is Westfield Primary School. I'm really pleased that we as an administration are using the data. We know that Westfield is one of the schools in the city with serving an area of absolutely the most need in the city. It's also one of the biggest schools in the city as a 3-form entry primary school. And, you know, I spend a lot of time speaking to residents in Foxwood, where I live, and in Chapel Fields, who are really pleased that particularly Chapel Fields is finally being sort of given some of these opportunities and some of this attention after so long. I know from speaking to residents that the current parameters around free school meals just don't work. There are so many families in our area and in our city as a whole who miss out on free school meals because they don't earn because they earn more than £7,400 a month as a year, as a household. I mean, that is such an incredibly difficult threshold to meet. Families with 2 parents working are struggling to feed their children in the current cost of living crisis, particularly, as we all know, with rents and housing costs soaring in York. And those households do not qualify for free school meals. So it is absolutely time that the council put an end to these ridiculous loopholes that just punish families who are in work and still really need that support. So I'm really pleased that this is being launched. I'm really pleased that Westfield is the school that it's kind of being chosen to pilot in. I also would just like to say, I really applaud the approach of implementing this through a pilot, through that partnership working, through testing and seeing what works before you roll it out to everybody with bugs in it or glitches or things. So I think that the way that we're working in partnership is a really good way of working, and I really hope that the council continues to work in this way with the people of York into the future. And finally, I'm not going to be here for 3 minutes. I just wanted to say that I am really proud to be part of an administration that believes in feeding hungry children and supporting the families who need it most without making them jump through administrative hoops to prove that they're worthy of that support. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson, very much appreciated, and we most certainly will consider your points when we make that decision. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Flick Williams, and she's joining us remotely. So Flick, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Good, Nick. You don't want me to give you a reminder, so I won't when 30 seconds comes up. So please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
The Castle Gateway scheme. I wholeheartedly welcome the commitment to retain parking as a blue badge holder only car park and what appears to be a further commitment not to reduce numbers from the current provision. However, my issue today is the Castle Mills Piccadilly element of the scheme. I spoke at the decision session on 17th of May 22, and my recollection is that from the 4 options available, the then now former executive member for transport sent officers away with the instruction to combine 2 mutually exclusive schemes. Well, we see how that contradiction resolves itself in paragraph 31 of the report. This has facilitated implementation by developers where they are progressing their projects and includes the creation of an additional integrated on-carriageway bus stop in front of the Banana Warehouse site. Really, well, let's start by calling it what it is, namely a shared use bus border where bus passengers are required to board buses by standing in a live segregated cycle lane. Even worse, a light into a segregated cycle lane where cyclists will be unable to see the bus doors open and passengers who intend to alight. For blind, visually impaired, brain injured, neurodiverse people and those with learning difficulties, this is just a literal leap in the dark. A non-disabled friend who recently caught a bus in London was horrified to see bus information scrolling the message, "Please be aware of cyclists as you leave the bus." The fact that the National Cycle Lobby captured the ear of central government during COVID is resulting in the rollout of unsafe infrastructure that puts the most vulnerable pedestrians and bus users at huge safety risks. Evidence is only now starting to catch up, but where research has been done, it shows blind and visually impaired and older bus users have now reduced or stopped using buses altogether because of safety concerns. At Tuesday's transport decision session, we were told the transport strategy is not a done deal. Well, both this and the harms meted out to the disabled residents of Queen Street by citing the forthcoming transport strategy appear to belie this statement. Also asked to provide alternatives to items of the transport strategy we object to, here is mine. I have nothing against segregated cycle lanes, but they must stop where bus stops are located, allowing passengers to board and alight directly to and from the pavement. Bus drivers are trained professionals and can be reasonably expected to manage to pull in and out of bus stops, avoiding cyclists. Accident data shows that the vast majority of collisions between cyclists and vehicles occur at junctions, not at bus stops. I want cyclists to be safe, but this cannot be achieved at the expense of disabled and older pedestrians and bus users who have protected characteristics in law. This goes directly against the goal to increase bus patronage. It will have exactly the opposite effect, and those most heavily impacted will be those for whom the bus is their
Thank you. That's 3 minutes now. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and they'll be considered within the Castle Gateway scheme decision. Thank you. The fifth speaker we have is York Cycle. Who is that? Can you, when you get on the microphone, could you tell us what your name is, please, so that we can identify?
So I'm Juliet James, and I'm reading a statement on behalf of the Cycle campaign. So we want to highlight 2 specific issues. Firstly, we note in item 6 on performance monitoring, although it's not referenced in the main body of the report, the notable decline in cycling in York. This demonstrates the urgent need to take action to improve cycling infrastructure in York. Increased cycling alongside an increase in bus travel are the key to solving York's transport woes, as these are the most practical and cost-effective ways of addressing congestion, reducing local pollution and cutting York's carbon footprint. In addition, cycling offers numerous other benefits in terms of improving health, wellbeing and equality. Secondly, we welcome the plans in item 10 for a modified Castle Gateway scheme, and we hope that the executive will approve the preparatory work for better active travel provision, including a new pedestrian cycle bridge across the Foss. We would like to stress that the cycling improvements that would form part of this scheme must be the start of wide-scale improvements to cycling provision in the area to provide safe cycling routes into the city from the south. In particular, we would like the council to commit to making significant improvements for cyclists on Piccadilly, which the Castle Gateway area improvements would link into. This is a recommended route for cyclists on the council's cycle map, but the route is clogged with traffic, including many cars using it as a rat run, making it unpleasant and unsafe for cyclists. Piccadilly has room for proper segregated cycle provision, and the Cycle Campaign and York Civic Trust have put forward practical suggestions on how this could be achieved. But as a short-term measure, the council should, as a minimum, reimpose the traffic restrictions that previously existed and introduce a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in the area. I'd also like to say there's no evidence that properly designed bus stop bypasses are unsafe for vulnerable road users. Thank you.
Thank you. And your comments will most definitely be considered. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Denise Craghill, and she would like to speak on items 10, 11 and 12 of the agenda. And Denise, you know you have 3 minutes. Would you like me to give you a 30-second warning?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Thank
off
you.
you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I could talk about all those 3 items for far too long, so I'm actually going to focus on item 12. As Green Party housing spokesperson, I want to welcome the continued commitment to the Housing Delivery Programme Design Manual, which I was privileged to help write back in 2019, including the requirement for certified passive house. Continuing to build highly energy efficient passive house homes at Ordnance Lane and Willow House will help to tackle climate change and the cost of energy bills for residents. Let's hope these passive house principles can now be extended to the new designs for Castle Mills, which I've always wanted. As ever though, the devil will be in the detail, with further planning applications and detailed business cases still to come. I've always been in favour of building as many affordable homes as possible on council sites, given the level of need in York. But building 100% affordable raises some big questions, such as where will the extra money come from in the current financial difficulties, and what impact will this have on the council's housing revenue account and its future ability to repair and maintain existing homes, make them more energy efficient and support existing tenants. The paper is clear that due to rising costs, there is limited capacity in the HRA, yet significant extra borrowing will be needed to replace income that would have come from market sales. I'm not necessarily against this. We all want to see more affordable housing as soon as possible, and I do hope that you can do it. But you will need to show that this isn't going to damage your capacity to manage existing homes. Some people may also be a bit disappointed if you can only do it by including a proportion of intermediate rent housing at 80% of market rents. In my view, this could meet a specific housing need, but I think you need to be clear that this portion will not help the worst off and the need for more social housing. The Housing Delivery Programme has a very specific role in setting standards, kickstarting supply chains and developing local skills, as well as providing housing types others may not. Local plan sites are set to provide an average of 266 affordable homes each year, set against the additional 140 one-off you now propose, thank you, after which capacity to build more will be further limited. It is clear the programme cannot meet the entirety of affordable housing need in York. It will be crucial for future working with housing partners, developers and Homes England that the programme is able to demonstrate financial resilience as well as continued innovation, influence and leadership.
Thank you. You
good
are
luck.
spot
Thank
on
you.
as well. Marvellous.
I
Well
said it like
done.
me.
Thank you for those comments. And just to clarify, we have no plan to include 80% market rent on any of our sites anyway. So I'm sure Councillor Pavlovic will speak about that a bit more later. Thank you. Right, okay, our final speaker then today is Mr. Chris Donegan, is it? Do we have?
That's right.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
close
you're
enough
remote,
anyway.
aren't you? I forgot. Sorry, apologies. Mr. Donegan is remote and you have 3 minutes. Would you like me to give you a 30-second warning?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Hello, Chair and members of the Executive. I'd like to speak to you about item 10, the Castle Gateways update, and in specifically, meanwhile use of 17 to 21 Piccadilly and Castle Mill site. With reference to the decision report, Castle Gateway Update Report and Next Steps, section 25, recommendations and reasons. That's page 9 of the report. There's 2 subsections, 1 and 3 on decision taking for this meanwhile use of these sites. Use of these 2 sites has direct impact on local residents. There is no mention of consideration of these residents in the decision process. Indeed, the whole document never mentions effect on local residents. Spark, which is of course 17 to 21 Piccadilly. So there's been ongoing issues with noise disruption to local residents from Spark, and I believe an assurance was given that the most recent extension of Spark's lease would be the last one. Castle Mills, noise and hours of use has been a major issue with the present meanwhile use of this site by C.R. Reynolds as contractor for York Council. There has been little control by council officers as to operating hours, as no operating hours seem to have been specified. Work has gone on at times from 6 in the morning until 7 or 8 in the evening, whilst generators have been left running overnight on occasions. This site possibly is operating illegally without suitable planning permission. The site is also in one of York's AQMAs, the Piccadilly AQMA, which is the air quality management area, of course. All I ask is if you decide to move forward with these options, you consider adding clauses in both subsections on the decision taking that require officers to consider the care, health and well-being of local residents whilst finding suitable temporary uses for these sites. In addition, operating hours and pollution limits need to be applied and enforced on these sites. All I'm asking that is local residents in Piccadilly and Warmgate areas of Guildhall are given similar considerations to those in other areas of York. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donegan, and we will take your thoughts and points into consideration during decision making. Thank you very much. Right, that is our 7 speakers within public participation. Thank you to everybody who joined us this evening for that section of the agenda. Our next item is the forward plan, and that's on pages 19 to 20 in your agenda pack. Does anybody have any comments at all on or thoughts on the forward plan, or are we happy to accept that and move forward? Okay, everybody okay with that? Thank you. Okay. Item number 6 is the Finance and Performance Monitor 2, and Debbie Mitchell is going to introduce that for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the second report of the year covering the latest finance and performance information. We continue to see a forecast overspend of around 11 million. And again, mitigation has been identified that should bring the overspend back to around £1 million. Given the scale of the forecast overspend, you previously agreed a series of actions to bring spending down to an affordable level. However, the forecast position is not really improving quickly enough, and therefore we will need to consider further mitigations, and we'll report on those at a future meeting. Messages to staff are being clarified and reinforced to ensure that only that essential spend is being incurred. So the financial position remains a very serious situation and will continue to require a significant amount of work over the months ahead. As a reminder, if we are not able to mitigate our position to the point that we're balanced overall, then we will need to use our general reserve, which will in turn put pressure on the financial resilience of the council. And given the scale of the financial challenge, we do anticipate that some reductions in service will be required to balance. So the summary position is outlined in the table at paragraph 17, and a detailed analysis of both finance and performance across all areas of the council is included in both the body of the report and the annex to the report.
Thank you, Debbie, for that. And just before we move into comments or on this part of the agenda, we have an awful lot of business to get through tonight. So just as we did last month, I'm going to ask that everybody who wants to speak speaks once and shows that they would like to speak at the beginning of an item. So if anybody would like to speak on agenda item 6, please could you indicate now for me? Thank you. Okay, thanks. Councillor Lomas, would you like to go ahead then, please? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Debbie, for the report. I think I'd just like to make a few comments, and I will be brief because I am mindful we have a number of finance items on the agenda this evening. The financial position of our council, in line with many other councils, is dire. As we implement these mitigations, we are seeing a very slight improvement in the position, but it is clear that we do need to do more. And with very little financial cushioning in terms of reserves, we have to act now to ensure that we can end the year with a balanced budget. We, of course, will continue to do this, and we will relentlessly prioritise our spending in line with the council plan and our each priorities. This report notes that the mitigations that we previously agreed have not yet had sufficient time to bring forward the expected mitigations. And I want to reassure everyone that this is a situation that is under regular review, and budgets both in year and future are subject to intense scrutiny at the moment. I want to finish just by noting that we cannot ignore the reasons for our financial predicament. 13 years of austerity and the lack of a fair funding review have left York at the bottom of the pile in terms of the already meagre local government funding allocation. And while we take the necessary actions to control our spending, we'll continue to make the case for better funding for local governments and a fairer deal for York.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. Councillor Eyre, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an executive that seems to be showing no ability to control the council finances. While first quarter pressures are common, the lack of improvement from Monitor 1 is a new and worrying trend, as the finance officer mentioned. Improvements of only £300,000, even after the unnecessary draconian actions, show a lack of fiscal responsibility. It's unheard of at this stage of the year for customer and corporate services in particular to be so far over budget, and even more unbelievable that that's getting significantly worse from quarter 1 to quarter 2. The executive continue to rely on parking income to balance the books, which this agenda elsewhere states you are planning to drastically cut. The figures in the latter agenda item underreport the risk. The Castle car park alone represents 20% of the total parking income. Loss of this amount equates to around 1.5% on council tax. Last year, overperformance on that particular site was £1.5 million. Already this year, 6 months through, it's achieving nearly £1 million over what it would normally bring in. Bringing forward the car park closure with no parking strategy, I believe, is financially irresponsible. I do note at paragraph 21, the state of earmarked reserves currently sits at 31.2 million, which is an increase of 10% over the last 2 years. Not only does that put to bed the misinformation this executive has been spreading about raiding of reserves by the previous administration, but it shows that those in-year cuts by this executive were ideological choices. Following proper financial monitoring by the Liberal Democrats, Councillor Coles was prevented only this week from spending money that didn't exist and showed when push comes to shove that funding could easily be found. If only you were prepared to do the same thing for the other ideological cuts you bulldozed through, such as the £150,000 you cut from youth support workers to deal with antisocial behaviour in Westfield and other wards, or the £100,000 towards supporting those suffering mental ill health and those with autism. Then there is the cost to be borne by residents of ideological dogma. We wait to see what the financial, wider economic and social impact will be of abandoning the Castle Gateway regeneration. This year alone, the bill is likely to sit at £1 million. By the time the electorate have had a chance to reflect in May 2027, that figure is likely to be north of £10 million. A high price to pay, but not one that can't be alleviated with a little common sense. In terms of performance, which hasn't been discussed, continues to show the strong legacy you inherited. The working age population, educated to level 2 and level 4 and above, is first regionally. Business startups are back to almost pre-pandemic levels. The working age population in employment is way above regional and national levels and even up on previous years. I do also note this represents a new suite of indicators, indicating what your priorities are as an administration. It is worrying, therefore, that key measures such as footway condition, crime and antisocial behaviour, fly tipping and graffiti, libraries and museums, and visitors to the city centre will no longer be monitored. This does give an early indication of what we might expect come the budget in February, especially given previous lack of guarantees on library closures, for example.
Thank you for those enlightening comments, Councillor Eyre. Yeah, I don't think that I will make much comment about them. I don't think it's really necessary at this point in time. So if we go back to the report, our recommendations are on page 22 for everybody. And we are recommended to note the finance and performance information within the report, and would like to ask if everybody can support that. Thank you. Yeah, that's unanimously supported. Thank you very much. All right, our second item is the capital programme Monitor 2. And Debbie, would you like to speak to that as well, please?
Sure.
Thank
This report sets out progress in delivering a capital programme and outlines the latest forecast on capital schemes. It identifies some £14 million of slippage to future years on a range of schemes. Considering our overall financial position, Executive previously agreed that we would do a review of the capital programme. That work is ongoing, and any impact on the capital programme will be reported to a future meeting. Then just the report itself contains a lot of detail around progress on individual schemes, but there are no particular issues to draw to your attention.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Would anybody like to speak on agenda item 7? Councillor Eyre, can you keep it short, please? Thank you.
It's a capital report that focuses on the success of the previous administration. It's obviously disappointing to see the delays in legacy projects such as the York Outer Ring Road and the Station Gateway. Do note the optimism at page 68 that the York Outer Ring Road will be an autumn planning committee, but given there are only 30 days left of autumn, I hope that doesn't mean autumn 2024. It's good to see progress on the station frontage, but equally disappointing that following the issues achieving planning, LNER have abandoned any future plans for improvements to the station, and the city has lost significant investment to elsewhere in the country. On page 68, paragraph 41, there is reference to a delegation to the Director of Environment, Transport and Planning regarding the Tadcaster Road scheme. Given the significance of any changes, we would ask that this is done in consultation with the executive member and the ward councillors. On a wider point, I think the delays we're seeing to capital projects, coupled with the Labour administration's promises around affordable housing, means that we will see ballooning costs of delivering these programmes at the same time as substantial reductions in the income generated to fund them. There's a major risk, I believe, that this administration does not deliver the key infrastructure our city needs due to the uncosted campaign pledges.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. So capital programme, the recommendations for that are on page 63. And it tells us there that recommend to full council the adjustments resulting in a decrease in the 23-24 budget of 13.009. I think there should be an M at the end of that number, million, as detailed in the report. The rest of the recommendations are as noted there. So can I see those who are in agreement with those recommendations? Yes, thank you. So we've approved those recommendations. Thank you very much. Item number 8 is the Treasury Management Prudential Indicators 23-24 mid-year review and Q2 Prudential Indicators. Debbie, thank you.
So it's a statutory requirement to report to you on Treasury management activities every quarter, and this report has also been considered by Audit and Governance Committee at its meeting last week on the 8th of November. It sets out an overview of the economic position and a review of borrowing and investment. No new borrowing has been undertaken so far this year, and we continue to closely monitor as best we can inflation and interest rates. And again, nothing particular to draw to your attention.
Thank you, Debbie. Would anybody like to speak on this item? No. Okay. So thank you for that. And the recommendations are on page 80. And it notes to us that in accordance with Local Government Act, note the Treasury management activities to date and note the prudential indicators, etc. It is a statutory duty for the council to determine and keep under review the affordable borrowing limits, and there are no policy changes to the Treasury management strategy statement. Can I see those who are in agreement with accepting those recommendations? Thank you. So it's unanimously approved as well. Thank you, everybody. And then finally, in this section, we have item number 9, which is the medium-term financial strategy update. Debbie, would you like to lead on that? Thank you.
So this report gives you an update on the medium-term financial position, and given our current financial challenge, it's clearly more important than ever that we do start to plan ahead and look at how we manage our finances over the 4-year period. So over the next 4 years, Council will really see some of the most significant financial challenges we've ever experienced, and I can't overstate the seriousness of the situation and the scale of the challenge ahead. Clearly, it's a national sector-wide challenge and not something that's unique to York. The report just really sets out some of the key assumptions that we've used, and it's important to note that these are assumptions, not decisions. Clearly, it will be full council in February to set the budget, but we do obviously need to make some assumptions for financial planning purposes, and that's all that they are. The table at paragraph 22 summarises the overall picture and showing that cumulative budget gap of 40 million over the next 4 years. And the report then just goes on to outline a suggested main strategy for closing this forecast budget gap, which is a combination of things like such as maximising external income, that continued focus on organisational efficiency, reviewing contracts, and so on. But as I mentioned about a previous report, we won't say 40 million without some cuts in service. So a programme of work is being put together that will support a series of reviews and other budget proposals that will look at things like structures and working practice across various services to also help identify where savings can be made. So it's just a general update on the medium-term financial position.
Thank you, Debbie. And Ian Floyd would like to start as well.
Yeah, it's just to really add to what Debbie has just said, and really just to stress to members who are here, any members who hear this, that actually this is serious. This is probably the biggest financial challenge the council will have faced. In the report, you can see there are some details in terms of historic savings. So there's savings you need to make as a council. You're not starting from a high base, you're starting from a very low base. And there's, sometimes when you look at savings and what you might be able to do, there's often a lot of nice words. There's nice words about efficiencies and transformation, and we'll do things differently. You can't take £40 million out through nice words. You only take it out through some hard cuts. And I think everybody in the council needs to be aware of that and be ready for that. It is a huge challenge. This isn't made up numbers. This isn't some sort of notional figures to try and scare people. This is a huge challenge, and it will require the work of everybody across the council, particularly elected members, to actually deliver it. And so I just wanted to stress that this is really just the beginning of some hard years in the future.
Thank you, Ian. And I hope that I think we all do appreciate your honesty with that. And I would like to second the severity and seriousness of this. And our executive members here have been working tirelessly to look at the budgets and see how we can work with officers and staff members to bring those costs under control. And it is not an easy task. And I really need to ask members across the chamber as well to take this seriously and participate in the opportunity to understand the budgets and where they sit and what future years bring, and not withdraw from the process in any way whatsoever. So I wonder if anybody else would like to speak at all. Councillor Lomas, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. I've already talked in an earlier item about the context, but I think some things to draw out here that we need to really understand, and you know, the figures that our spending power has reduced in real terms by 28.5%. We rank 143rd out of 150 councils on funding, and when all public services are taken into account, we go down to 150th of 150, bottom of the pile in terms of funding. It is absolutely crucial that we exhibit prudence in budget setting to ensure that we remain able to control our own council, set our own budgets, make our own decisions, control our own destiny. That is the situation we're in here. Work has been going on in the background with hours and hours of meetings between executive members and officers to examine every possible saving, every possible alternative and creative way of delivering services. When we have done this, we have looked to our council plan and our each principles to make sure that we're following our own priorities, that we're making sure that what we do spend is prioritised to those who need it most. But there is no easy way to deliver this magnitude of savings. And as officers have said, it will require cuts to services. And I have been honest right from the beginning when I first took over this role that we should call them cuts, not savings or efficiencies or anything else. We have to call it cuts to service because that is what will be delivered. And that is delivered because of a lack of funding for local government and a particular lack of funding for York because of some unhelpful ideas that York is somehow an affluent city where everyone has more than enough. And we know that that is not true. Councillor Nelson in public participation was talking about the families who need us most in Westfield. And we have a duty to make sure that we are able to do the right thing for those families that Councillor Nelson was talking about and families like them across the city. So what we have to do is we have to reduce some services, to cut some services, and we have to maximise our income where we can. And we're going to embark on a series of engagement events to discuss the decisions that we are making with the city. We absolutely expect that with more hard work and difficult decisions, that we will be able to present a balanced budget to Budget Council next year. And we expect that because I have trust and confidence in my colleagues around this table who are doing all of that hard work in the background with officers. And I have trust and confidence that they will do the right thing for the people of the city, that they will put aside political point scoring and they'll make the difficult decisions and they will stand up for the things that residents elected us to stand up for. We were elected on a manifesto that promised to target support where it is needed most. And our council plan and our each principles provide the framework for us to do this. And despite all of the cuts we're having to make to the current in-year budget and the cuts that we're going to have to consider for future years' budgets, we are still bringing forward progressive policies to support those people in our city who need us most. This budget is going to be tough, and we know that, but we also know that residents trust us to make tough decisions, to prioritise fairly, and to be open and honest about our decision making, and that is what we will always do.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas, and thank you for all the hard work that you're putting in a very difficult situation and policy area. Right, would you like to speak, Councillor Eyre? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's worth reflecting that this pressure has been evident for some time. We've been doing medium-term financial forecasts every year as part of the budget process. I think while this paper does set to sort of soften the public up for the impending cuts, it's worth noting the situation actually is starting to improve slightly. In February this year, the reported pressures to May 2027 were £35.8 million. This paper reduces that down to £30.85 million. Though this doesn't tell the whole story, as this paper does artificially deflate potential income from this period, down by around £4 million. Simply applying the same assumptions as we used in the budget papers, the forecast pressure over this period drops from 35.8 million down to nearer £26 million. This change in income forecast is in itself interesting, and Councillor Lomas mentioned her election promises. In the election period, Labour candidates were elected on a promise that, quote, a vote for Labour in May was a vote for freezing council tax. This paper outlines a council tax increase next year of almost 5% and then 3% per annum going forward. This leaves two simple questions for the exec member. Can she confirm that there will be no council tax freeze in the medium term? And also that it is this administration's policy to fix council tax increases at 1/3 below the possible levels. The other point of note is that this medium-term forecast ignores all Labour's policy pledges. There is no revenue increase to cover additional borrowing. Where is the growth pressure from car park closures? Where is the money to fund free school meals? The reality is that once these cost pressures were added in, the Chief Finance Officer would have had no option but to issue a Section 114 notice. In terms of the comments about us withdrawing, we've never withdrawn and we're happy to engage in the budget process. As an administration, we brought budget papers forward earlier than any other administration. They were made public to all members in December. We'll be happy to engage with that process. The sooner the better in terms of us, and we look forward to receiving those detailed budget papers in the next couple of weeks. Thank you for the offer.
Yes, Councillor Lomas, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wasn't intending to respond, but there were some frankly inflammatory untruths in what you just said there, Councillor Eyre. Firstly, the cost of free school meals, as you keep calling it, it's in there. It's in paragraph 22. You can see it. It's in the table. So there you go. It has been included. Please don't besmirch officers like that. We've also included the growth required to staff the barriers that's only needed because of your blue badge ban, discriminatory action, and the workaround to put it right. I think also it's absolutely incorrect to say that we would be issuing a Section 114 notice if the free school meals cost was added in, because it is in, and we are not issuing a Section 114 notice. And I have made it absolutely crystal clear that we intend to present a balanced budget to Budget Council in February. So I would welcome your constructive and even critical comments, Councillor Eyre, but please keep them truthful.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. And I just wanted to say on this as well that the situation for councils across the country has deteriorated really rapidly in the period since inflation has gone sky high. We're fortunate that it's starting to come down now, but that doesn't mean that we aren't still suffering from the 10% cost inflation, and also the pressures on the demand for services and complexity of those demands that have been experienced by every council across the country. And the reality is that I sat there where you are, Councillor Eyre, for at the last year, and asked every time that we had these budget and finance reports coming through, what were you going to do about the underlying pressures that meant that you were plugging gaps with the reserves? And now we have the minimum amount of reserves that we require, and we have nowhere to go with that. And you mentioned earmarked reserves, and yes, they are available, but once they are gone, and that is a problem. So we must tackle those underlying pressures. We have no other way of planning for the future, and that is what we are going to do. And I am writing to the Chancellor to make sure that he has a letter in front of him from me about the pressures that York is under and other national local authorities are under too. I can foresee over the coming years that revenue budgets across the country will be driven towards statutory services. That's where we are going at this point in time, and that will get worse and worse every year. So we have to find other ways of delivering on our ambitions for the things that make being in council and living in our cities the nice things, the reasons that we want to do this role. And so we are looking to external funding, and the combined authority is going to be tremendously important with that. We can remain ambitious. We are fortunate. York has an awful lot of opportunity for combined authority, our partnership working, which I have to say the city is welcoming with open arms. We had over 50 city partners in here last week at the council plan launch, and the change in approach to welcoming them back into the building again is absolutely overwhelming. And we've had commitments from them to help us to deliver on the council plan and not put pressures onto our budgets. Other pots that we will be looking for are central government funding, that I look forward to a change of government and the ability to look for new forms of funding in that way as well. So this will be ongoing. It will never end. And I think we all need to adjust to the new reality and get on and deliver for the people of York. And that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you. Right. So our recommendations on item 9 are on page 98. And executive is asked to agree the medium-term financial strategy as outlined in this report. Can I see in those in favour of the medium-term financial strategy? Thank you, everybody. Right, now we can move on to the more optimistic side of the agenda. Now we've done the finance. Item number 10 is the Castle Gateway update, and we have Catherine Daly here and Nick Collins and David Warburton, who are going to introduce this item to us. Thank you for coming along this evening, and please feel free to start. Who's going to start? Catherine, you are. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Catherine Daly, Head of City Development. So as executive will be aware, can you hear me okay? Sorry? Yeah, it's on. Is it not working? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. So as executive will be aware, the Castle Gateway Master Plan was originally approved in 2018, which followed an extensive period of engagement with residents and stakeholders. And the key objectives of the Master Plan are about unlocking the economic and heritage potential of this important part of the city centre, as well as improving sustainable transport and reducing traffic within the inner ring road. Over recent years, the component projects in the master plan have been impacted by a number of macroeconomic factors, including construction cost inflation, which has driven increases in project delivery costs, rising interest rates impacting on council borrowing, and housing market uncertainty. And we've also had two unsuccessful levelling up fund bids, which have sought to fund the delivery of the public realm around Clifford's Tower and the Eye of York. So these factors have all impacted significantly on the business case for phase 1 delivery that was approved by executive back in January 2020. So following a comprehensive review, this report sets out the recommendations for how the Castle Gateway projects can be revised to deliver positive outcomes for the city in accordance with the original master plan principles, but also the recently approved council plan and our city centre vision, which executive approved last month. I presume that members have seen the written statement submitted by York Bid, which has been sent in response to publication of the report. And you'll see from the statement that the bid board remain committed to the idea that the Castle Gateway project can be a driver of footfall and trade for businesses. However, they're also keen to understand the new ambitions of the project in more detail, particularly how these relate to car parking, which remains an important issue for businesses. So they've extended an invitation for the council to attend their next board meeting, which we've now Finally, just in response to the queries raised by I think it was the 7th public speaker, just to confirm that we'll look into the concerns raised about the CR Reynolds operating hours at the Castle Mills site. So we'll take that away as an action. And I'm sure Nick will pick up on the point about local residents. So thank you. I'll hand over to David now just to give a brief overview of the report recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Good evening. I'm David Warburton, Head of Regeneration. Primarily, I'm here to answer any questions members may have on the report, but just to highlight a few key points following on from Catherine's introduction. Nick Collins, Head of Property, will talk to the recommendations on 1721 Piccadilly and the Coppergate. But following on from the context of the review for the Castle Gateway schemes, we've set out a number of recommendations for moving forward, and I just wanted to talk through those after a period of pause and uncertainty. For Castle Mills, this means a continued pause of any development work, but investigation of options to deliver 100% affordable housing on this council-owned site, exploring those interim use options, and significantly seeking to deliver the sustainable travel connections behind the Castle Museum with the new Foss Bridge connection linking Piccadilly, and utilising West Yorkshire Transport funding to secure those improvements. For St George's Field, it means not building a multi-storey car park, which proves too costly for additional space created, but instead reconfiguring the surface level to provide more parking spaces to improve standards, a coach drop-off facility, and with pedestrian and cycle links to the riverside and onward into the city. And for Castle and invYork, a revision to the scheme which is currently in planning to retain blue badge parking and to consider a softer, greener design with the repurposed car parking space prioritising family use. And the Coppergate proposals necessarily complement this. I'll hand over to Nick to talk you through the recommendations.
Thank you, David, and good evening, everybody. So the report recommends granting a 2-year lease extension to Spark York at the 17 to 21 Piccadilly site, given the continued success of the facility, which provides a home to a multitude of small businesses, whilst noting the limited interest in the affordable housing opportunity which was being pursued. This will run from the expiry of the existing lease for 2 years, thus being the 31st of October 2026. We will continue to explore options for affordable housing on the site and also work with Spark to find an alternative location in the city for the future. As of last week, discussing with colleagues in the environmental health team, I'm advised that there were no recent or open complaints in respect of the Spark operation. I would also like to draw your attention to paragraph 39 of the report, which stipulates that the current contents on noise within the existing lease will remain in the proposed extended lease in response to the public speaker's query mentioned earlier. The report also sets out a recommendation to grant a new extended head lease to the head lessee of the Coppergate shopping centre for the benefits outlined in the paper, most notably to secure new investment into the retail facility at no cost to the council. Finally, I can also advise that subsequent to the publication of this paper, that the head lessee has offered to make a £25,000 donation direct to the shop mobility service, and this will form part of the deal structure as outlined. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic, and it's great to see this moving forward along the lines that we would like to see it move forward. Thank you for that. So can I see who'd like to speak on this item then, please? Okay. Councillor Lomas, would you like to go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank officers, the officers here this evening, and everyone who has contributed to the report, but also to all of the work in the background to respond to some clear direction to come up with a way to deliver what the city needs at Castle Gateway, despite the constraints that Catherine outlined, and the situation that the council itself faces in terms of finances. I'm very pleased to see this plan taking the principles from the feedback that residents gave to the My Castle Gateway consultation and seeking to deliver them in a staged way that is realistic, feasible and affordable for us. Interestingly, gone is the sea of paving that the old Lib Dem Green administration called a city centre green space. And instead, we have a radical approach of planting green things in green spaces, giving the city centre much needed softening and biodiversity, which I'm certain will be welcomed by everyone, because I think that was the original vision when people said they wanted a city centre park. Gone is the St George's Field multi-storey car park that one commentator suggested at the time would be empty before it ever covered its costs. The folly that was the attempts to move forward with the development of that car park will cost us dearly. We will have to write off all of those costs that were spent by the old Lib Dem Green administration developing a multi-storey car park that would never ever reach its full potential. Instead, we'll refresh the car park that is there and make best use of the available space, keeping non-essential car journeys outside of the city centre. And note, I say non-essential car journeys, because also gone is the discriminatory removal of the city's biggest block of centrally located blue badge parking with no mitigation for access. We know that the old Lib Dem Green administration struggled to understand access needs, but we will not repeat their mistakes, and we will provide parking for those with blue badges as close as possible to the places that they need to be. We have shown our determination to use every ounce of creativity that this city can offer us to provide a space that we can all use and be proud of. And we will do that without bankrupting the council. Now, I want to take a moment to speak about Spark. I know that to some, Spark is controversial. And I know that, like with all things in infancy, there were some teething troubles at first. But as Spark has matured, like all things, we have learned to value what it brings us. Small business startups, opportunities and support for community organisations and ventures, a different offer in a once neglected part of the city. We recognise that the site that Spark now occupies is not necessarily ideal for their permanent home, but because we value them, we are working with them to develop a permanent home while we bring forward feasible plans for the long-term development of the site they currently occupy in line with our manifesto pledges. And we're going to offer Spark a temporary home while we work to do that. All of this could have been started many years ago. And we might be in a different position right now, but we're in the situation we're in, and we've come in to rescue the plan. I'm also thrilled that the Coppergate Shopping Centre has been able to be wrapped into this change to the plans for Castle Mills. And granting the new lease is going to unlock much needed investment in the shopping centre. And it is, of course, music to my ears that it won't cost us anything. The refreshed public space will be of benefit to everyone who uses it, but it also delivers us something quite special, which is the use of some land that will enable us to transform the rest of the invYork site. And the promise of the shop mobility funding is just icing on the cake, and I know will be much welcomed by Shop Mobility, and I look forward to talking to them about it when I go to their anniversary celebration in a week or two. So I am absolutely delighted that we've found a way to rescue this plan, and I look forward to seeing something actually happen at Castle Gateway.
Thank you, Councillor Lomas. So do I. Councillor Eyre, do you want to speak now?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's difficult to know what to say about this paper, not least because I've had multiple warnings that in no way should the public be told how much the value of the land is that they own. I do appreciate the difficulty of marrying pre-election slogans with the actual financial reality of running the council, but this is what I would urge this executive to do. The byline for this report could well be, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." I can only assume that is the reason that all financial information has been stripped from the report, so the public can't see that this entails washing millions of pounds of taxpayers' money down the drain in order to do nothing. What it does do is cancel the construction of 126 new homes during the housing crisis Councillor Pavlovic keeps highlighting, Of these, 40 would have been city centre affordable homes. I'm sure we'll hear later on about what the administration is doing to deliver more affordable homes, but Councillor Pavlovic may want to reflect when talking to that paper what the net increase in affordable homes will be as a result of all the decisions that are taken tonight, and how many millions of pounds of taxpayers' money is spent delivering those handfuls. It puts an end to the My Castle Gateway vision for world-class event space for the city centre. It cuts localised parking provision by 50% with no strategy for displacement and no assessment of the combined economic impact to the area. In a written submission from the bid, which I mentioned earlier, and I would hope that that would be attached to the minutes of this meeting, 82% of businesses surveyed opposed this executive's approach. I remember vividly Councillor Kilbane accusing the council of putting all its eggs in one basket with the levelling up bids. This paper has barely any eggs and no basket at all. In the absence of either levelling up or develop again, this leaves further taxpayer borrowing or yet more speculation of divine mayoral intervention as the only options to bring these schemes forward, thus transferring the ability and control over these schemes to a mayor somewhere else in North Yorkshire. In terms of the multi-storey car park, I think it's important to reflect the reality of the financial saving. Even if the borrowing figures presented are accurate, the saving of 1.1 million per annum is dwarfed by the loss of 1.6 million per annum in parking income, as well as the abortive costs. With regards to the Coppergate Centre, my thanks go to officers for the work they've done. It's incorrect to say on page 174 that the original approach was not to secure improvements. Officers have been in negotiation for some time, and I was actively involved as exec member from as early as 2019. While the figures can't be discussed here, they are broadly in line with previous discussions and do represent value for money. I would ask why, however, given the council's stated aim to remove all non-essential traffic from the city centre, no agreement has been reached in regards to the Coppergate car park, and this agreement actually extends the use of that car park. The Castle Mills plan has even more damaging aspects, and the suggested delay serves to do nothing but massively devalue the site in its ambition to do nothing. Paragraph 42 shows that failure to progress the site will allow planning permission to lapse, incurring significant additional cost through new building regulations and any future planning application. Paragraph 44 shows that developing the bridge and riverside routes separate to the wider development removes key aspects of the enabling development, as does the separation of the public park. Planning permission in this sensitive area relied solely on enabling benefits, which renders the likelihood of any significant future development less likely. All in all, this is a genuinely poor set of options, designed not for what is best for residents or the city as a whole, but designed solely to align with Labour Party manifesto pledges that were never deliverable. You have U-turned several times in the first 6 months, so it's not something you are fundamentally opposed to. I would urge you to take stock on this and think. Rowing back on a manifesto commitment is unfortunate, but just think of the numbers, or at least the ones we're allowed to discuss. Abortive cost of £4 million, not necessary. Lost income, £1.6 million, not necessary. Lost capital revenue, £1 million, not necessary. Lost developer gain, as in the last figures, the ones we can discuss in public, loss of between £6 and £10 million, not necessary. By May 2027, this will be the council that threw away over £20 million and built nothing, while at the same time claiming poverty and raiding residents' pockets to introduce charging for green bins, closing swimming pools and libraries, and cutting services to the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kilbane, I think you're next, aren't you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I won't deign Councillor Ayre's ludicrous comments with any detailed answer, and I apologise to officers for the insults that have been thrown around about you this evening. I apologise on the council's behalf. Instead of which, let's concentrate on what we are doing. If it's fair to say that the city breathed a sigh of relief after the elections last May, then they are now filled with enthusiasm, as we saw at the Seat Partners meeting last week, followed the next day by the Economic Partnership, which was just full of people from all over the city, from businesses, from organisations, from civic society, cultural institutions, who are really keen that we get on and start delivering the things that we need to deliver to make the city a better place that it can be for everybody here within the constraints that we've got that have already been outlined. Can I really thank officers for this paper? I really love the way that you've worked through the 8 themes of the city centre vision that was re-agreed only a month or so ago, and sort of applying them to the Castle car park to show what an attractive, welcoming, world-class kind of space that can be. So that's really nicely worked out, and I think residents can see that. Of course, we are more than happy to go and talk with the York bid about how we can use this space to increase footfall and to attract people into that area and to make it a really sort of vibrant place. I mean, this is, you know, if you look at what we delivered at the last executive, you know, scrapping the blue badge ban, getting the transport plan consultation launched. You look at what we're delivering this time with actually doing something on the Castle Gateway site instead of it being in the doldrums like it has been for the last few years. I think people are perfectly capable of making their own minds up as to what administration gets on and does things and what administrations don't. So really welcome what's been happening here. I mean, obviously, no, not very happy about the fact that we're going to have to write off £1 million for a multi-storey car park that should never have been thought of in the first place, but was, I mean, I assume was pushed through for some sort of ideological reason. It's quite hard to understand. We are, of course, aware of the parking requirements for the city, and we are looking at a capacity throughout the whole of the city, but we also need to, if we are serious about reducing the amount of miles driven, then we also need to look at how people access the city and if there are better ways for them to do that. So yeah, all good stuff, I think, going on here. And finally, really welcome the decision to extend the lease on Spark. It's a really good, vibrant space. It's used by lots of people that don't use many other venues in the city centre. So it's a really good, welcoming space for a whole range of different people. It is a bit of a shame it's clad in all of that wood, though, isn't it? But, you know, that's I think that was a decision of a previous administration too. So very happy to thank for the report and to support the acknowledgements, and really keen to get cracking and start transforming our city centre for the better.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbane. I have to say it has been a really heartwarming and very positive process working with the officers in the regeneration team to look at how we can better deliver for the aspirations of the city. And I think what we can see here is on pages 117 to 121, a whole raft of recommendations on different aspects of this project. So I'm not going to read them all out, which is what I would generally do to make sure that we have covered all bases. There is a lot of technical detail in there, a lot of delegation for decision making in order to move these projects forward. But yes, Councillor Eyre, we are going to deliver on this, and we are getting on and doing it. So can I ask executive members then if you are happy to approve the recommendations listed on page 117 to 121. Can you show hands, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Marvellous. Let's move on. Let's get it done. Thank you very much. Yes, I've just had it requested that we have a 5-minute comfort break. So it is 10 to 7 now. We'll be back at 5 to 7 to carry on. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, thank you everybody for bearing with us, and we're resuming the meeting now, and we're moving on to agenda item 11, which is the specialist mental health housing and support, and Jamila Hussein is going to come and speak to us about this report. So Jamila, thank you, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm bringing the paper on behalf of my colleagues Abid and Caroline, who can't be here today, and we're seeking an amendment. So just to give you a bit of background on the mental health housing and support paper, it is something that came to executive in 2020 after we did a sufficiency review around the support for people with enduring mental health and high levels of mental health need, including substance misuse and alcohol misuse. So people with sort of very complex lives. It was approved that we would look at having around 53 units of care, both bed-based and also support-based, and we worked on the 2021 Housing First model, which is a model that's nationally approved to be working really well with those people with complex needs. So way back in July 2021, we went into a formal agreement with our health colleagues called a Section 75, where we agreed 4 million over 10 years to bring a new model of service in for mental health. There were plans drawn up around using two existing buildings, House, I think, hope I've pronounced that correctly, and Crombie House, and also using some of our existing houses to support the Housing 21 first approach. Unfortunately, that resulted in no provider coming forward, so there was no take up either care provider or another provider of taking this service forward. Hence, we regrouped and we did a further consultation over 2022 to actually have a better insight to know exactly what we wanted to achieve. You know, when we're talking about we need a new model of care, what does that mean? Talking to people who use mental health services, providers, to make it really clear of complex needs and what are complex needs. And when we talk about mental health, were we fully aware of people with mental health and their actual needs and where are they? So we know a lot of people spend quite a lot of time in forensic rehabilitation. Some of our forensic mental health rehabilitation units are in Leeds. People stay there for a long time because there is no other avenue for people to go for step-down care, and they often then end up in residential care. And that's when you're thinking, oh, Jamila, you're talking about health, but that residential care element then falls to ourselves as a local authority, and most of those placements are out of area. Some of the individuals end up in Delane in Foss Park after an assessment and treatment under the Act. And again, what we find is we have that lack of step-through provision. So straight from hospital, many end up in residential care. And just to give you a flavour of the costs, we have 65 people in out-of-area placements. That cost us around £80,000 a week, which is 4 million a year. And we think that if we had a better model of care, those really high-end complex individuals, we can actually support better at home and give them more fulfilled lives by supporting them locally and making them really active participants in our community, rather than them staying in residential care. And that would be their life journey. Some of them have stayed, people have stayed in residential care for 15, 20 years. And actually admitted in their early 30s. So there's no quality of life for some people who go into residential care. So we've come today to look at a slight change and variation to the original ask. We're working to look at a local building in Holgate called Holgate and Holgate Road, 7 units of support for the most complex. We've already identified the 7 individuals who we think would really be suitable for this housing. We work very closely with our chief colleagues and ICBs. We have got funding for it. So in the original Section 75, we had £926,000 of pump priming. We've got around just 400 and I think 35,000 left. The cost of this unit for the 12-month pilot would be 425. We have had agreement with Tuve to use that. And if you think, oh, what's happened to the rest of the money? Well, the rest of the money last year, because we didn't have any services in place, the impact on adult social care was huge. We had to have more assessments being carried out and more support was being done through adult social care. So some of that money was moved to the local authority to support really complex individuals, but then no housing avenue for them. Hence, some of those 65 then did end up in some of those 65 have ended up in residential care. So the ask today is to say, you know, we still are committed to developing that programme, but we are committed to developing that programme in the right way. It's not just about, yes, we need units of care and let's bring them in, but using this pilot as a basis to say, are we getting the right model in? If it is the right model, we will then build on that model and look at different ways of supporting people in the community. We don't really want segregated places in the long term for people. We want more community-based provision, and this would give us an insight on how we can do things in a more informed and structured way, working with the individuals in there. So we were looking at designing this with people who use the services rather than officers who think that what may be good, and this will give us that opportunity to work with more of our individuals, both who are in out of area placements, because we're consulting those individuals, but also people who are in post-park. So I'll just end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamila. And can I see who'd like to speak on this item, please? Councillor Coles, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. And thank you, Jamila. And I'd also like to thank the officers who I know have worked incredibly hard on putting these amendments in this paper and the proposals together. It is a really important step in enabling us to support some of our most vulnerable residents with some of the most complex needs in the city rather than out of the city in expensive residential placements. I welcome that collaborative approach of working alongside service users and alongside other council departments so that we're working collaboratively to try and ensure that we deliver the best possible service for those residents, bringing them back into the city, but more importantly, bringing them closer back to their families so that there is an increased chance of them being able to integrate back into independent living, which is much more difficult if they're out of area. So thank you for ensuring that that was part of this report. We know from here and other committees that in recent months there has been a huge increase in mental health pressures, in particular pressures on adult social care, but also in acute and crisis mental health provision. And I know that you and others have been working closely with colleagues at Tuve and in health to ensure that we are getting the maximum support that we can for our residents, but also ensuring that we are doing things collaboratively and collaborating around budgets as well. As you said, this is a pilot unit for 12, up to 12 individuals. And I hope that it is successful and we'll be able to inform our thinking for the longer term so that we can expand this kind of collaborative supported accommodation for vulnerable residents in the longer term. And thank you for bringing it to us today. I would hope we'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, really welcome this paper, and thank you, Jamila, for the work that's gone in. I think in one of my past lives, I spent 4 years working at York Mines, specifically working with mental health service users across York and North Yorkshire, making sure that their views were fed into the decisions that were made in terms of commissioning. And this particular area was one of the biggest issues that was ever flagged. I think people always have that thing of when they get into services in crisis times, services were very good, but that lead up into services and that way back out of services again were always the biggest issues. That step up and step down provision was never there. And mental health services shouldn't just be a safety net in terms of catching people when they hit crisis. We should be talking about promoting positive mental health, making sure people have general mental well-being. So really support things like this, the schemes that are here. I think it's pulled together the work that's been done by our administration for several years to try and solve that lack of housing and support for residents with mental health issues. I think we recognised a long time ago that accommodation was lacking and that joint working with TUV was the only way forward. It's taken a little bit longer than I would have liked, but I did actually put this money into the budget, 131,000 in 2019, to enable this piece of work to go ahead, and it is good to see that it's finally got there. I think the last thing I would say is on top of that 131 we put in 300,000 pounds over the last 2 years as well, and I would really call on this administration to reinstate that 300,000 pounds and make sure that money is also put together with this to really deal with that mental health crisis.
Thank you, Councillor Eyre. So the recommendations for this item are on pages 204 and 206. So recommended to adopt a phased approach of delivery, enter a service contract with a mental health support provider and grant a lease of 92 Holgate Road. And then there are a number of other delegations there as well, and I'm not going to read them all out because that would take a while to. So please can I see if people are executive members are in agreement with the recommendations on page 204 to 205, sorry, 205, yeah, so it's unanimous. Great, thank you very much, and thank you, Jamila, and I'd really like to thank you for your service to City of York Council as well, because I know that you are ending your time here with us and going off to pastures new at the end of the week. So thank you for everything you've done, and it's nice to see this come through as well, just as you're going. Thank you very much. Right, our next item then, we are getting there, everybody. So item number 12 is delivering more affordable housing in York, an update on the housing delivery programme. And so we have Michael Jones and Sophie Round here to speak to us about that. Michael, do you want to turn your name thing around? That's it, then the camera can see. Thank you. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This is the latest housing delivery report, which seeks to respond to the council plan of accelerating the delivery of good quality affordable homes in York. 3 approaches are presented in this paper, which alongside the local plan housing allocations support a comprehensive response to the city's housing challenges. The first approach is to continue the direct delivery of affordable housing through the housing delivery programme. This report presents opportunities to increase the amount of affordable housing to 100% at Willow House, Ordnance Lane, as well as the purchase of 10 homes under the Local Authority Housing Fund. The second approach is to support our housing association partners to deliver 100% affordable housing projects through the disposal of 2 parcels of land, one at Woolnow House and one at the 68 Centre. The third approach is through longer-term partnership opportunities. The first is York is now a signed-up member of the York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership, which we hope will bring future opportunities, working in partnership with our housing association partners to deliver more affordable houses in York and the sub-region. And the second is around York Central and opportunities that may come through that once a master developer is announced. I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who just wants to provide a little bit of more detail, particularly around that query about the potential impact on investment into existing housing stock, which was raised by a previous speaker.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to come back on those particular comments. So the projects that we look at here and that we're going to deliver directly through the council will be standalone projects, and we won't be looking to negatively impact other HRA projects such as retrofit. So the way we'll look at it is a very thorough viability assessment to make sure that that net rental income services the debt that we'll need to borrow to provide 100% affordable housing. So though this report doesn't present a full business case, at the moment we've done extensive modelling based on pre-tender estimates, and we feel confident that we can achieve a 100% affordable viable scheme.
Thank you, Sophie, and that is absolutely music to my ears, I have to say. So I think this might be the U-turn that Councillor Eyre was alluding to earlier. I don't really know what kind of U-turn this is, because this is exactly what we committed to the city that we would do, and we're showing that it is possible, and we are getting on and we are doing that. So before I carry on that, who would like to speak on this item? Right, thank you. So I'm just going to carry on for a moment then in that case. So I've got Councillor Pavlovic and Councillor Eyre. And this is an absolute example of the hard work that has gone in by everybody. So that's officers and members. And I'd particularly like to congratulate Councillor Pavlovic on this paper. We committed to the city to putting 100% affordable housing on council-owned land because, surprise, surprise to everybody, if we as a local authority are not doing it, nobody else is doing it. And our city needs affordable housing. We have to find ways of doing it, and working internally on how we deliver our housing is really important. But that partnership working and being able to look to housing associations across the city, across the region is tremendously important. So Council Plan was launched very recently. A partner launch happened last week, and tick, we are doing it. So there you go, Councillor Eyre. Right, next then is going to be Councillor Eyre. Please tell us what you'd like to say about this one.
Thank you, Chair. As I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to know what to say about the paper, given we're not able to discuss the single most significant issue, the value of the sites and the cost of taxpayers. And actually, the update we had from Sophie had much more information in than the actual paper. I posed a question earlier to Councillor Pavlovic. What does this meeting do in terms of increasing affordable housing delivery? The quick answer is it cancels construction on 46 and adds an extra 68. That's a net gain of 22. If you factor in previously agreed affordable homes that are not included as being delivered in this update, that figure reduces to somewhere between 13 and minus 42. Does that transform affordable housing delivery in the city? No. Is it good value for money? Who knows, as yet again, the paper hides the true costs. Paragraph 7 states there will need to be additional borrowing to fund the Ordnance Lane and Willow House sites. Based on the current average house prices, which is all we can talk about in this meeting, the lost income could well be in the region of £9 million. So while I welcome the update that we believe that may be affordable, I would have liked to have seen those details actually here and available for members to give them proper scrutiny. In terms of Woolnow House and 68 Centre, again, it's difficult to comment, given we are prohibited from telling the public how much the land is worth or what discounted rate the land is being offered at. All I would say is, under a more transparent executive, when the proposal to dispose of 17 to 21 Piccadilly was brought to executive, this information was made public and the difference was in the region of 50%. As a general rule of thumb, you can therefore assume that the disposal will likely cost taxpayers a seven-figure sum. I wasn't going to mention this particular bit, Councillor Douglas, but you did say, where is the U-turn? So I was, in terms of saving us time, I wasn't going to mention this bit, but you specifically asked where the U-turn is. So the U-turn actually comes from 2020 and comes from yourself and Councillor Webb. So I was going to seek clarity from both ward councillors around the table regarding the 68 Centre, because back in 2020, Councillor Webb said there had been a managed decline by the Liberal Democrats so that the building can be demolished and replaced with something else, or even sold off to the highest bidder. The building was used for youth services, something for which the city is crying out for and which it could be used again. Yourself, Councillor Douglas, said there is huge potential for the 68 Centre to provide decent space for local community use and for organisations. If the political will was there to commit to a community venue in all parts of the city, not just in some. Well, the U-turn may be the correct decision. There was nothing in the consultation papers or anything that explained why your position changed from maintaining the 68 Centre as a youth venue, a community venue, to turning it into housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pavlovic, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to respond to the leader of the opposition, who's so churlish and so sulking about losing power that he can't recognise a good news story when he sees one in front of him. But I'd like to thank Michael, Sophie and their team, not only for the excellently presented report tonight, and the months of hard work that's gone into getting us to this stage, but also for the enthusiasm and the support for the change in approach to the housing delivery programme we're now seeing coming to fruition. As the paper shows, York is already in a housing affordability crisis, with average properties now at around 11 times average wages and rents increasingly out of reach to many, coupled with a growing housing waiting list, exacerbated by increases in evictions from private rented, and families finding mortgage costs stretching their already beleaguered finances. The need for affordable housing has never been greater. The failure over the last 5 years to deliver affordable housing is stark. An assessed need of 2,960 over that five-year period has actually seen only 648 delivered. The Labour administration said we would deliver 100% affordable housing of mixed tenures that people want, and this paper shows our commitment to delivering that. At Ordnance Lane alone, we will see an increase from 60% affordable that the previous administration pledged to 100%, an increase of 49 homes on just one site that will go to people who desperately need it. These will be well built, warm and secure. And because we've now been able to drive down the construction costs, warm and secure, and built to passive house standards. At the former Willow House development, we'll be moving to the design and procurement stage for another 100% affordable scheme. But building costs money, and we are being prudent with what we can afford to borrow. So we also said in our manifesto that we would look to work with our social housing partners to help to deliver 100% affordable housing, something that they have told us they're desperate to do. The opportunity to dispose of the two sites at the former Woolner House and the 68 Centre to a registered provider of social housing is something that we should embrace. These sites, which are either an empty plot or a building that we're now told cannot be viably restored due to the neglect of the previous administration, will allow the earlier completion of housing that will deliver a further increase in genuinely affordable housing, to make reference to the points that Councillor Craggill raised earlier. Finally, the opportunity to take advantage of grant funding to purchase 10 homes from the market to increase resettlement and temporary housing, which the city desperately needs, is too good to pass up. The housing delivery team have extensive experience of doing this, and I know they will be able to quickly move on it. I hope the executive will approve these recommendations and will recognise that as an administration, we'll match our principles of supporting those in need with our actions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pavlovic. Very well said. Councillor Webb, I think you wanted to say something briefly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought I'd respond directly to Councillor Ayres. Churlish, was it? I think that's
Churlish.
Thank you.
Yeah, Churlish was
2020, it seems like a long time ago, but I do stand by what I said. The Liberal Democrats did manage decline on that site. Nothing happened. It still sits there with nothing having happened on it at all for a very, very long time. And as a result, we need to do what we can for communities. And so this is what we're going to have to do responsibly. And I want to just finish by saying thanks to officers, thanks to members who've been more involved about this than I have. And I'm sure that vulnerable communities in York will thank you as well. This is a good thing for the city and certainly a good thing for our ward of Heworth. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Well said. And so the recommendations are on page 287 and page 288, everybody. And I would like to also draw your attention to our commitment that I think you've heard time and time again already today in partnership working and the membership of the York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership, which was one of the first things that we decided to do as an administration to join that, along with North Yorkshire Council, to really deliver regionally on the dire need for truly affordable housing across our region. And yeah, it's another thing that the public and also our partners have been over the moon that we were willing to consider that, haven't they? So very heartening. Thank you. So page 287, we've got recommendations A to F there, and then we have G, H, I, J and K. So please can I see those who are in favour of all those recommendations? And that is passed unanimously, and we are going to build 100% affordable housing. Congratulations, everybody. Thank you. Right, we can move on then to item number 13. And Councillor Kilbane is going to leave the room. Thank you, Councillor Kilbane, and we will come and find you in a moment. We won't forget you this time. So if at the back, please do remind us if we leave Councillor Kilbane out, because outside. This is item 13, extension of the Young People's Community Wellbeing and Support Service. And do we have Jamila to come and speak? Sorry, we preempted your last performance at executive, didn't we? So Jamila's coming back to the table. Apologies. Thank you.
So, yes, so shall I just start?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So this is a paper just seeking an extension of the children and young people's contract, wellbeing contract. It's a contract that supports young people from the ages of 16 to 25, those who are experiencing homelessness or require support to remain in a family unit. The contract currently works really well. It provides support in the home, but also what's called night stop, those individuals who need support outside the home in assessed areas. So that works, the contract works really well at this time. However, we are doing a review around the homelessness pathway. There's been changes sort of nationally around Ofsted and supporting 16 and 17-year-olds and having to be registered. And we just need to understand what that actually means in terms of support, and then how we can widen the support around other service areas and other services that are around in York at the moment, and also have that a pathway across adults and children's, because we are all age commissioning. We want to make sure that it's seamless across the 16 to 25 and 25 years and over. So it's not to say that we're coming here to say that the contract isn't working well. It is, but it's coming to an end in January. We are seeking, and why we've come here, because we do need to seek an extension. This particular service has been extended since 2014, so it's ready to be redesigned and looked at in a slightly different way. So the essence of the paper is a 6-month extension review. We have got a date of when a new service should be in place at the 31st of July, which aligns with the adults paper, which will come at the next exec, and we are hoping to look at procuring a service by then. I think there was some concerns about reviews again, because we have done quite a few, and we are aware that we have done those, but we actually are now ensuring that we have a full implementation plan, which we will share with both exec members, Councillor Webb and Councillor Coles, to ensure that we keep on target. So there's going to be some strict governance in place that we don't slip from the July deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamila. Who would like to speak on this item? Okay. Right, Councillor Webb, do you want to speak on? Do you want to start? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You weren't sure then, were you? I did put my hand up. Thank you, Jamila, for presenting the report, and please pass on thanks to the officers who've been involved in this directly, noted in the report. And also, I want to take this opportunity to thank Safe and Sound Homes, or SASH, as it is better known, both the staff who work for SASH, but also importantly, the families providing those safe and sound homes for struggling young people. The offer of supported lodgings and emergency night stop services are absolutely key to some young people in our city. And we shouldn't lose sight of that these are helping some incredibly vulnerable young people. As an administration, we have had a very busy start, it's fair to say, and is evident in this meeting as a whole. And something that I think I'm keen to look at, and I know that Councillor Pavlovic, Councillor Coles, we're all quite keen to look at, is reviewing our homelessness pathway. And that, for me, obviously, that's specific around the youth homelessness pathway. And, you know, this is key to responsible governance in York. So this 6 months, it gives us time to do that, make sure we have a laser focused on helping those in need in the best way we possibly can. So thanks for presenting the report. The work really does start here, though. We're already on with that in quite a number of ways, but it's something we can't lose focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Eyre, do you want to go next?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Obviously support this decision to extend the contract with SAS for another 6 months while the review that Councillor Webb referred to of the young homelessness pathway takes place. CBC have worked with SAS for many years. They've been a really useful source of beds in private homes for those at risk of homelessness young people, whilst helping them into education and training and eventually back home or into their own accommodation. I think they have an excellent reputation with the public and I believe have been a charity chosen by the Lord Mayor. They cater for a very vulnerable group of young people who need a safe and secure base for that period. We do need to have a seamless service for young people who are at risk of homelessness, not one that separates between under 18s and over 18s. These young people often don't want to be at home or in foster care. They want to be more independent, and that's what SAS helps them towards. So any help we can offer in terms of progressing that forward in terms of the review, happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, and thank you, Jamila. And as Councillor Webb said, please pass on our thanks to Abid Mumtaz and Caroline Billington, who I know have driven this report forward behind the scenes. As I said earlier, as an administration, we are committed to working collaboratively between council directorates, particularly because we know the budget constraints are there, but also because we actually know that working collaboratively helps us to deliver a better service for residents in the city. So this contract extension will enable us to do that. It enables children, young people, adult social care and the commissioning team and housing who have the responsibility for the homelessness pathways to work collaboratively and together across the city to put the interests of some of our most vulnerable young people at the heart of what we're trying to do. As others have outlined, we will be doing that work over the next 6 months during the course of this contract extension. And it's really welcome that there is an opportunity to kind of look at this properly and how we can really make this service deliver for vulnerable young people. I did just want to say this is, I think, the final executive for Jamila as Director of Adult Social Care. So I know you're moving on to another role at St Helens, but I did just want to say that one of the things that I've learned in the 6 months since we came into administration is the complexity of adult social care, ensuring that residents are kept safe while preventing unnecessary costs within challenging budget constraints and challenging executive members. So you've got an amazing team of dedicated professionals who are working in adult social care. We all share concerns about ensuring the most vulnerable are looked after and supported to the best of our abilities. I just wanted to thank you for everything that you have done and wish you very best wishes for the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles, and thank you, Jamila, and your second attempt at a goodbye. So the recommendations for this report are on page 332, and they are to approve the extension of the current community wellbeing and support contract for young people with SASH by 6 months until the 31st of July 2024. and also to delegate authority to the director of the corporate, the director of adults and integration and delegated officers in consultation with the director of governance and the chief finance officer. So I won't read the rest of the legal aspect of that recommendation for you, but it is all on page 332 for people that would like to review it. So can I see those who are in agreement for that contract to be extended? Thank you, everybody. Great. And now I'm going to beat the odds, and I'm going to say, let's bring Councillor Kilbane back in. I usually forget, and we're 10 minutes down the road and he's still outside. Thank you, everybody. Right, we are getting close, everybody. We really are. And Maxine has been sat there very patiently for 2 hours. So thank you, Maxine. Would you like to come forward and speak to agenda item number 14, which is the delivery of Key Stage 2 Universal Free School Meals pilot project? Please go ahead. Thank you.
The paper in front of you actually outlines a proposal to deliver on the executive's commitment to investigate the introduction of universal free school meals for all primary school children in the City of York. The paper outlines the scoping that's been done around proceeding with a pilot project to introduce universal free school meals into Key Stage 2 at Westfield Primary School, which is one of the most deprived ward in the city. And the reasons why we are suggesting that the pilot is run at Westfield Primary School is because it's our largest primary school in the city. It provides then a really good testing ground for the delivery and scale up of the project in the future. It's also as well a primary school which has had a major kitchen refurbishment over the last few years. And so following our assessment of the state of readiness for them to be able to scale up the delivery of free school meals, their kitchen is in a position to be able to do so immediately. So we factored those things in as we were reviewing the readiness to deliver on the executive's commitments to this particular project. The paper outlines the benefits of the extension of free school meals to all primary age children. There's a wealth of research evidence about the importance of good nutrition in the formative years of primary. We also know as well from some of the research that's been done with Westfield Primary, the cliff edge moment that appears for children and families as they leave the universal free school meal offering Key Stage 1 and enter Key Stage 3. And at Key Stage 2, sorry, and at that stage, children find it very, very difficult because they've been used to having a hot lunchtime meal. And at that point, a number of children move from having a meal provided by school and have to move to a pack-up lunch. That very often is due to the economic difficulties that the families are finding in having to pay for meals for the first time at the end of Key Stage 1. And it becomes difficult for them to actually access a paid for option at the end of Key Stage 1. So this project is to explore the difference that this will make in terms of addressing childhood hunger, which we know impacts on achievement and attention in school. We also are addressing the current cost of living crisis and exploring the difference that this will make through this pilot. We would like to run a comparative pilot of the difference that a breakfast offer, a universal breakfast offer, would make. And we have suggested the way that that could be explored through a contrasting school in the city. So going again to an area of very significant deprivation, but choosing a school that is is very small, and a school that at the moment hasn't had a major kitchen refurbishment in the last few years. So using what we know about their state of readiness, they would be ready to implement a universal breakfast offer to the 130 children that they serve, and that would be the entire school cohort. So this would also extend the offer to children to be able to be fed twice a day, and it would cover both those who receive a universal free school meal through the infant free school meals offer in Key Stage 1, and would extend that to all children in Key Stage 2. We are suggesting, obviously, that should only be implemented should additional funding become available through the community fund. But at this stage, that the commitment would be to run the Westfield project using the funding that was signed off as part of the emergency budgets when the current administration were appointed.
Thank you, Maxine. That's fantastic, and it's really heartening again to see this coming forward, and another excellent example of commitment and delivering on the council plan and our election pledges. So I couldn't be happier. And can I see who wants to speak on this, please? We've got Councillor Webb and Councillor Eyre. Councillor Webb, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to extend my thanks to Maxine and her team. This has been a lot of work behind the scenes that has been done by Maxine and her team. I'm pretty certain in their own time, on top of everything else that they do for this city, and that is really recognised by people in schools about how much work that our team are doing. So thank you, Maxine, because I know this hasn't been easy, but you've really thrown yourself into this and done brilliantly for us and for the city. I'm really pleased that this item has come here tonight. This is this administration again delivering on our pledges in a responsible way for the people of York. Supporting people in our most vulnerable families, first with our council plan focus on affordability, and our most vulnerable children with our council plan focus on health and well-being via healthy food. First and foremost, as Councillor Nelson highlighted, we're delivering for the residents of Chapel Fields and Westfield. I went along to Westfield Primary School just before half term, alongside Liberal Democrat councillor and school governor, Councillor Waller, to discuss the plans with the schools and parents directly. And I sent out a mini survey to parents over half term. And again, I must thank council officers for helping me put that together very quickly at the last moment. And it was very short notice. And from that, we got about 40 responses in 2 or 3 days, which, given the group of young people that we were talking to, or the group of families, that's actually a pretty good response rate in the time. And I think we could have got a lot more had the afternoon that we went along to Westfield Primary School, had it not been absolutely bucketing it down, we'd have probably got more, but there you go. A few points from that survey. Everyone agreed that food is getting more expensive. That's an obvious point. We all see this all the time. And around half of the people suggested that it is getting harder to provide healthy food options. And that's something we shouldn't lose sight of. About 85%, so it wasn't universal, but about 85% of people agreed that a free school meal will help with household finances. And over 90% of people suggested that they take up this offer if provided. And a couple of quotes from this now. One parent said, "Although we don't qualify for any support, we do our best. This is such good news and will be an amazing offer for all children." And another parent said, "This would enable those families to not have to decide whether to heat or to eat." Now, as an administration, we have been unashamedly supportive of the approach of looking after our most vulnerable residents first. And that is run through this paper. That is the heart of this paper. And I'm so pleased that we're pushing forward on this policy, as I've said, in a responsible way. It's the right thing to do. I'm glad we're doing it. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Eyre?
Thank you, Chair. I think I was told planning B last night was over 5 hours long. So I think well done in terms of getting it through in the time that we've got through with everything on the agenda. So I think it's good that we're seeing Key Stage 2 children in Westfield will be in receipt of free school lunches, and children in Burton Green hopefully may receive free breakfasts. As Liberal Democrats, we want this to be every child, and we have a national plan to deliver it. Unlike Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, who have abandoned their pledge to deliver free school meals for all primary school children. I did note with some disbelief the comments in paragraph 1 referring to an election manifesto commitment to, quote, create a cross-city alliance to address disadvantage and the cost of living crisis. This wouldn't have played quite as well in sound bites on election leaflets or on the doorstep, and that's why that manifesto pledge didn't exist. The manifesto commitment was unequivocal: ensure every primary school child gets a free school meal. There are some serious concerns about the project. As the cliff edge that Maxine mentioned, if free school meals are not delivered to these primary schools beyond the pilot, then parents who have budgeted for their children to receive daily free school meals will face serious hardship in adjusting back to not receiving them. The council has so far failed to respond fully to FOI requests regarding the steering group, and I've still not been invited after my previous comments that we have been excluded from that one. Beyond evidence of unminuted meetings with major developers and the press to discuss funding this manifesto pledge, the group remains a closely guarded secret. Given the cost of delivering this pilot scheme is £129,000, with only £100,000 coming from the council and a further £29,000 required from the community fund, hopefully the executive member can confirm that the £29,000 has been raised or pledged already. We were told before the election that Labour had organisations ready to help fund the entire pledge for free school meals for primary school children in York. In reality, this is no more than a time-limited pilot in one school, and this report has more red flags than the COP at Anfield. It seems odd at paragraph 6 that the executive seeks to manage expectation of schools and families, given they were the ones responsible for setting that expectation in the first place. Similarly, it is unclear why in that same paragraph, it is only now that head teachers are to be consulted on the policy. Surely they are precisely the partners that should have been involved in the development of the policy, not just in its implementation. Paragraph 30 regarding evaluation appears to be an evaluation of the policy, not the pilot. If the executive genuinely believes in the policy of universal free school meals, then the criteria at A to D adds very little to the debate. Any evaluation should demonstrate how this is rolled out to all other schools, not whether it is worth rolling out. The financial and legal sections outline a litany of concerns regarding lack of funding to start the pilot, issues with existing catering contracts, and complex procurement issues, none of which seem to have been satisfactorily bottomed out ahead of launch in a few weeks. There are concerns that, similar to the vouchers for free school meals, parents over school holidays during the COVID lockdowns, this could create a reliance on a provision which is not sustained, and what will happen at the end of the pilot. It's not giving the school, especially the kitchen staff, much time to prepare, to take on additional staff in readiness, and potentially change the timetable of the school day. The executive does not seem to have given consideration to the impact on pupil premium of parents eligible for free school meals choosing not to register given their automatic entitlement. Westfield Primary has had great success in this area previously, and if through unintended consequence, just 20 families did not register, the school would lose the equivalent of one full-time teacher. This is why the Liberal Democrats have made it clear that free school meals must be done nationally, so that pupil premium reform can happen alongside this, and schools won't be left on the hook with reduced funding. Paragraph 26 is, however, the most alarming. I would ask the executive member to explain how he can square this statement with his manifesto commitment to ensure every primary school child gets a free school meal. Will he now state that this paragraph is redundant and every primary school child will get a free school meal during the term of this administration?
Thank you, Councillor. Given that you said at the beginning that it was a good thing, I think that you've made us think that you don't think it's a good thing, but I'm not sure that the parents and carers of Westfield Primary would necessarily agree with you on that. I have to say that our approach to delivering this programme for the city is to get on and deliver it and work in partnership, and that is exactly what we're doing. And I'm really glad to say that the York Community Fund partnership agreement was signed this week, and Two Ridings Foundation are ready to go with the fundraising, opening that up to the city as soon as we possibly can. And it has been really quite heartening, hasn't it, Councillor Webb, to see who is coming forward. We have done this in an appropriate manner so that our partners can make their own decisions, and we know that we've got everything lined up and all the I's dotted and the T's crossed before we launch into something, which I think is what you're insinuating is what you would have done, is just launch in without any planning. We are not going to do that. So we're really looking forward to showing you the campaign plan when we get going with that leading up to Christmas. And we've got some really key people who are going to support it as well, haven't we? So it's absolutely fantastic. Councillor Webb, would you like to say anything further at this point?
Not really. I think a lot of the points that Councillor Eyre raised were a bit ridiculous, quite frankly. But what I would say is on the pupil premium point, I think it's a fair point, really, which is why we've been exploring auto-enrolment where possible. And actually, Westfield Primary, let's champion Westfield Primary yet again. They have done brilliantly at enrolling every possible parent that could have been eligible for free school meals anyway through the government scheme to make sure that there isn't that gap on cliff edges. Yeah, the current cliff edge is obviously at the end of Key Stage 1. And what this policy does is obviously start to move that up to the end of Key Stage 2. I mean, there shouldn't be a cliff edge, full stop. But we've got to do what we can do. And this is a brilliant starting place. On working with schools, I'm sure Councillor Waller, for example, is fed up of seeing me at Westfield Primary. We do need to do whatever we can to work with schools, work with head teachers, and we've listened to head teachers, which is why actually there is this breakfast meal offer in place, because if it's subject to funding, of course, because that is something that head teachers said from an education point of view, there are real benefits to that, and it'd be wrong not to explore it. So that's what we're trying to do. We're doing this in a measured, appropriate and responsible way, because we know where we are as a city. We've got to bring the city with us on this. I am over the moon that people are turning up and saying, this is a good idea. Let's help it. Let's support it. Let's do what we can for those young people. So, yeah, we're going to keep going. And I hope you can be more appreciative soon. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. And I just like to say we went to Westfield Primary this morning, actually, didn't we? And were welcomed with open arms there by the staff and the kitchen staff, and we've had some lovely photos taken, so that was very heartening. Right, page 343, the recommendations, and 343 and 344. So we've got the implementation of the pilot project, lunchtime offer at Westfield Primary School, and then subject to the funding, and you can wait with bated breath, Councillor Eyre, on that one for the breakfast at Burton Green Primary, and I don't think you'll have to wait very long, which is very heartening as well. And then we have some legal delegations, and I would like to see who is wholeheartedly and utterly in agreement and support of this one. We are all over the moon. Thank you very much. That is unanimously passed, and well done, everybody. Thank you, Maxie. Right, okay, last item. We are there, people. I've had no notification for agenda item 15, urgent business, so I call this fantastic meeting to an end, and congratulations. Thank you.